This is Now Africa 24. It began not with a press conference, not with a warning, not with diplomacy.
It began with a single line quietly added to the U.S. Embassy website: visa services for Burkina nationals are suspended until further notice.
No explanation, no context, just a digital gate slamming shut. Inside Burkina Faso's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the silence was sharp. Screens lit up, documents opened, officials leaned in, and one reality became painfully clear. This was not routine administration. This was leverage. Only 48 hours earlier, Washington had demanded that Burkina Faso accept a group of individuals labeled as Burkinabè deportees, people whose files were riddled with contradictions, dates of birth that didn't match, birthplaces that changed with each document, individuals who had never held Burkinabè papers in their entire lives. Burkina Faso's response was calm, but historic. Burkina Faso is not a dumping ground. And with that single sentence, a small Sahelian nation did what many others had quietly avoided for years. It said no. Chapter 1. The policy behind the pressure. This confrontation didn't begin with the visa freeze. Its roots stretch back to a U.S. policy strengthened during the Trump administration, a mechanism that expanded America's ability to deport individuals even when their citizenship was uncertain or undocumented. Most countries, fearing visa sanctions, accepted these deportees without resistance, but Burkina Faso became the exception. When the first list of names arrived, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs followed protocol. Verify identity. Confirm place of birth. Locate records in the National Registry. What they found made verification impossible. One person had 3 different reported birthplaces. Another used 2 surnames with no traceable national ID. A third had 0 documented link to Burkina Faso, except a decades-old interrogation statement made in the U.S. None held Burkinabè passports. None appeared in national databases. None matched any historical registry. Burkina Faso rejected the entire batch. Washington escalated. Pressure increased. Language sharpened. What began as a request slowly morphed into a demand. The question inside Ouagadougou became unavoidable. If this begins with deportees, what comes next? Chapter 2. The freeze. The visa restrictions arrived quietly. The kind of bureaucratic move designed to hit hard while looking neutral. No speeches, no press release. Just a silent administrative strike. Suddenly, Burkinabè citizens could not apply for tourist visas, business visas, student visas, official visas. It was a sweeping freeze, broad, deliberate, and crafted to generate pressure without diplomatic noise. The justification was short. Burkina Faso has failed to cooperate on repatriation procedures. But inside the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the reasoning didn't fit the scale. The number of disputed deportees was fewer than a dozen. Visa freezes are usually reserved for countries refusing hundreds or thousands of confirmed nationals. Something was off. Something was missing. And then, the missing piece surfaced. Chapter 3. The leaked memo. 2 weeks after the freeze, a confidential document appeared, not within Burkina Faso, but through a friendly West African government that quietly passed it on. It came from a U.S. policy advisory group, and it mentioned Burkina Faso in a completely different context: Sahelian migration and extractive data access challenges. One paragraph changed everything. Countries with closed registries and limited data sharing practices require incentivized engagement pathways. Visa leverage remains an effective tool when dealing with administrations prioritizing sovereignty over transparency. The deportees were simply the gateway. The real objective involved access to Burkina's migration logs, border activity data, mineral export metadata, internal digital systems, Since 2023, Burkina Faso had tightened its digital sovereignty policies, restricting foreign access to sensitive datasets. And for Washington, that loss of visibility in the Sahel, military, migratory, and mineral, was a strategic problem. The deportees had become a pretext. The visa freeze became the pressure tool. And the real battlefield was data. Chapter 4. The Closed-Door Meeting. Inside the presidential compound, a meeting was called. Only the core circle was invited. Foreign Affairs, Interior, Security, Digital Sovereignty Unit. The analysis was blunt. 1. The deportees were not Burkinabè. Their identities were unverifiable and inconsistent. 2. The visa freeze was not proportional. It didn't match the trigger, meaning the trigger was only symbolic. 3. The leaked memo revealed the underlying objective: data access. A pathway emerged, step by step. Accept the deportees. Demonstrate cooperation. Allow a joint migration database audit. Expand the audit to border metadata. Extend it to mineral trade transparency. Lose sovereignty over multiple data layers. Burkina Faso had seen this pattern before, in smaller states across Asia and Latin America. The conclusion was unanimous. If we concede once, we concede forever. The government decided, no deportees without verifiable nationality. No data audits framed as cooperation. No expanded access through pressure. This was no longer a misunderstanding. It was a geopolitical test. Burkina Faso chose to stand firm. Chapter 5. Open Confrontation. The U.S. Embassy's next diplomatic note was sharper, describing Burkina Faso as uncooperative and non-responsive. This language is rare. In diplomatic code, it signals escalation. American officials then implied that visa access could be restored if Burkina Faso demonstrated procedural alignment, a coded phrase meaning compliance. Inside Ouagadougou, the temperature rose. Not with anger, but with clarity. Burkina Faso crafted a formal response emphasizing it had not refused cooperation, only unverifiable individuals. Documentation, not pressure, was required. Visa suspension was inappropriate for disputed identities. The statement was precise, legalistic, unshakable. It showed the world Burkina Faso was not being difficult. It was being sovereign. Chapter 6. What comes next? Across West Africa, governments watched closely. Some quietly supported Burkina Faso. Others stayed silent, worried they might be next. But the question echoed across the region. If a small Sahelian nation can stand firm, why can't others? The U.S. had expected submission. Instead, it encountered a government that had spent years tightening its control over resources, borders, data, national registries. For Burkina Faso, sovereignty was not a slogan. It was policy, and pressure would not rewrite it. In the end, this confrontation was never about a handful of uncertain individuals. It was about who defines citizenship, who controls data, who influences African governance, and who gets to pressure whom. The U.S. expected routine cooperation. Instead, it found a nation drawing a line, not loudly, not provocatively, but firmly. And in geopolitics, firmness can echo louder than any threat. Burkina Faso understood one truth: if sovereignty bends today, it breaks tomorrow. This was a test, and Burkina Faso chose not to fail it. Make sure you're here for the next chapter. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us as we uncover the rise of a continent preparing to step into the digital world not as a follower, but as a force.